We've reached the official start time, but as usual, we will wait a few minutes for the join rate to slow before we jump into the agenda. A link to the notes and agenda is in the chat. If you've not skimmed it already, please take a moment to do so. Our join rate is still fairly high. All right, our join rate is beginning to slow. Again, there is a link to the notes and agenda in the chat. Please, if you're willing, share video. We like to have this be as close to an around the table kind of conversation as we can achieve. Do remember that the session is being recorded and will appear at YouTube. Add yourself to the notes in the participants section. Please skim the outline of the notes quickly if you've not seen it already. It is the backbone of the agenda. If there are topics that you would like to reorder or add, we take them as agenda bashes here at the beginning. All right, our join rate is now pretty low. Just a quick repeat, if you're willing, please share your video. We like to have this be an around the table meeting. Do remember that the session is being recorded and will appear on YouTube. Just after the last tools call, we had the blog post about the IETF tools team retreat show up at the WW website blog. There's also a discussion of that retreat that occurred a couple of tools team meetings ago. If you've not seen these things, please review them when you can. A quick summary of the outcome of that and what our focus at the moment is captured in this big picture session of the agenda. The highlight is that we are putting a great deal of our focus at the moment still on the RPC's workflow management tooling, what we're referring to as purple, the RFC website, which we refer to as red, and the tooling, which we call DraftForge. And this is being driven by the impending RFC 10K boundary that we're going to hit. The existing tooling, the lift to get the existing tooling to deal with RFC 10K is too large. There are parallel efforts that we have in progress that are listed in the bullets on the agenda page. We are making sure that each of these things is also moving forward and not completely cycle starved based on other work. Just as a reminder, we're coming out of a period where we had a very heavy focus on the parts of the infrastructure that people don't normally see as we were moving things into the cloud, as we were changing how we were using the cloud. building the basic infrastructure for dealing with storing our data somewhere other than a single shared file system. And that pushed many projects further forward in time than we had initially expected. The discussion in the blog post and in the tools meeting a couple of meetings ago talk about how we are going to avoid being surprised by the delays that are incurred by projects like that going forward. So I did not hear any agenda bashes, so I'm going to jump into the hot topics. The first is we made this change to the data tracker password requirements. We announced them a week ago. We turned on enforcement today. We haven't seen any feedback since turning on the enforcement today, and the fact that there are so many people here is a good indication that we don't have any dramatic remaining problems. So communications went fairly well. We used the data trackers announce status tool. That seemed to went fairly smoothly. I saw in the chat some discussion about making video recordings available for distribution by third parties. Jay, where did you add this? Is it under AOV? Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, I see it. Anybody have any questions about the password requirements change? Any comments about how we might communicate such things differently going forward? Did that seem to be effective to everyone?
I do have a question there. It seems the pop-up is coming up every time, multiple times on multiple pages. It doesn't seem to have some sort of cookie that remembered that I discarded the pop-up.
It does. Do you have something that's cleaning cookies? It is a cookie. It is a cookie mechanism at the browser that will remember that you did a discard. Now, I did change the message today, so any discards you had done earlier, you're still going to get a new message today.
So I got a few today, but so I got one joining this meeting actually because it needed to log into Data Tracker, and the login pop-up itself had the cookie as well.
Yep. That's the login is on auth.ietf.org and not datatracker.ietf.org, so the cookie has to get stored against that name.
Okay, I'll see if it stops popping up today then. Thanks.
All right.
I got the same problem as you, Paul. Just joining now and today as well. But I'm afraid I'm simply clicking on the X of the box and not on the discard. If there is an X on the box, I don't remember what I did.
The X on the box is the right thing to hit.
I have only one comment there, but is that it'd be nice if you had a general message explaining why exactly we are picking the rules we are using, so that people understand why we are doing that.
That was in the email announcement, and if you click on the show more on that pop-up box, there's an explanation there.
Yeah, okay. Well, I did miss it. So I'm suppose that more people will miss it.
Well, look in the email, look in the archive for the email message.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah, just a quick summary. This is enabling moving to a different authentication system that will eventually allow us to support federation, multiple factor authentication, and passkeys, things of that nature. So there's not been any validation, verification, grooming of the passwords on the data tracker pretty much since it was created. And we have several things out there that are in a questionable state. So moving on to IDNets 3, we've been signaling that this is close to beta for some time. We believe at this point it's ready at least for more extensive testing. There are a couple of known issues that I think are big enough that we need to squeeze them out before we announce this as a general beta, but that I'm hoping something that will happen before we get to IETF 123, and before and during 123 we can get a lot of community testing of the IDNets 3 itself. The current release is at author tools. As we make new releases, they'll be deployed immediately there. You can also run it locally. Instructions for doing so are linked from the notes here. We would appreciate starting to get as much feedback as we can about where it's reporting silly things and where it's missing important things.
So any chance to add another button for the per document page where you can get check IDNets or something? There's a blue button, and get another one.
We'll add a link to the data tracker once the thing is past beta. While it's still making silly suggestions, we should have informed people that can recognize that they're seeing something silly exercising it.
Okay, let me try to do something in the course print. If I can just edit this button for the ADs, for instance.
Okay. So our next topic, Cloudflare has made Cloudflare streaming available to us under Project Galileo. We're in the process of doing the work to investigate what would be needed to use it with the Medico player. We're expecting to make it an option for the player as an alternative to YouTube. As noted earlier, we're planning to continue to post the videos to YouTube as well and add Cloudflare streaming as an option for the playback. So I was hoping we might be able to say a little bit about what would be needed with Medico, but the preparations for the meeting have not given them an opportunity to look deeply into that yet. So hopefully we'll have that within a couple of weeks. Christian, let's move your any other business up and talk about it now. You were asking about how video recordings can be made available for distribution by third parties. This is a conversation that we're having with the LLC and with the leadership. There are some fairly serious questions about how we signal licensing as we make these things available for distribution that we're working through. I would expect that we'll have something to say about this shortly after 123, but not likely before.
Okay, so for context, I have been working with a bunch of guys in the Fediverse Mastodon infrastructure. There is a version there's a program based on the ActivityPub that underlies the Fediverse to publish video called PeerTube. And I think it would be very nice to have something like that going on because, I mean, it's a federated system. It's not controlled by any big actor, etc. So I think it's very much in line with the, I would say, the spirit of the IETF. I understand that there are licensing issues. I mean, we did prototypes by effectively scraping the data from YouTube, which pretty much anybody can do today. The prototype shows that this PeerTube stuff actually does work, and it has about the same ease of use as YouTube. So that's cool. That's so much for prototyping. And there were several volunteers that say, yeah, based on the data that Robert gave us, we could absolutely do that. It's not a big deal. But I mean, of course, the question then is, how do they get the data in an organized and basically something better than scraping from YouTube? And that's where we are now. I have a bunch of volunteers, but I mean, the problem with volunteers is that they will disappear if we don't give them some hope that their stuff will be used.
Understood.
So, I mean, it'd be nice if we could give them some kind of a status message at some point or something like that. If it is after the IETF 123, that's fine too, but I mean, July is fine, September is not. By September, they will have disappeared.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, it was our intent to have conversations about this during the 123 meeting. And Greg, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
Christian, if that system is running to the point where there are having other people play with it would be useful, feel free to send a link to the.
Yeah, I will do that. I mean, it'd be nice if people here could just look at the link I'm going to send and see what what they have done. They have taken half a dozen videos scraped from YouTube to populate a small database, and so that you'd be able to look at the website, what was the user experience. But of course, the big problem is to have the provisioning of the videos. I mean, have some kind of robust way of getting the video to the publishing site, etc., and also the advertisement. So that is not something that they can do by themselves. But I'll send the link. Yes.
Jay,
Christian, Christian, is there any potential provisioning technology that you know of that you could use that we could support?
I will ask the question. Okay, and so yes, I mean, what they expect to do is, okay, what would be really nice is something like RSS, but also otherwise I will ask the question.
Okay.
anyone have any other comments on this topic? I wanted to make a quick note about some things that I've been forced to look closely at again recently about group and role history in the data tracker, trying to address the large number of tickets that we have about providing extra information on people's profiles pages about their past engagement with the IETF, the past roles that they've held, and on building out statistics-oriented dashboarding where knowing how long a group existed was important. Answering questions like how many RFCs has this group produced divided by how many years has it been in existence? And rediscovered that the data tracker just does not know this information. It was designed to help move work along. It knows about now for any version of now. It has some rudimentary capturing of history, but it has only been useful for very recent history. It's actually not very good at even recent history, answering when somebody leaves a role position, like when does someone stop being a chair of a working group. Turns out to be something that we have to guess at given the data that is currently being captured. When you go further back in time, notably when you get to around 2011, the constructs just don't exist at all. That was around 2011 that the idea of role and role history was added to the data tracker, and information about roles before 2011 have not been backfilled. There's not even a good place to backfill them into. So we've got a fairly good idea of what we would need to do to the data tracker to have a better idea, to support having a better idea of what these dates for when groups came into existence, when they were closed, when they were closed as a BOF, and for when someone held a role and when they left a role. But populating that information, once we put the data structures, the better data structures in place, is going to require essentially asking the community. So I've been discussing with several people what we might do in order to get quality data out of an exercise where we crowdsource that information. I've got a pretty good idea of what shape I would like to see the data come into so that it would be easy to move that data into the data tracker once we believed it was reasonably good. I have ideas about how we might use something like GitHub with a bunch of lists, and people can contribute issues or PRs against the lists to say, yes, I know this person was a chair of this between this time and this time, and bonus points if, and here are links into the mail archive that show that this happened, things of that nature. We're probably going to try to recruit one or more community members to lead and drive getting this data into as complete a form as we can. So if you're feeling personally motivated, let me know. If you know of somebody that you think would be a really good champion for driving this forward, again, please let me know and talk about this with the people that you know at 123. And let's see if we can get some inertia up behind it. So the important part of this is that we're going to want to make sure that we've got an eye on the credibility of the data coming in and trying to capture as much provenance of the data as we can as it happens. Thoughts, comments?
Just to say it's a useful thing to do, but how to do it is a different story.
Jay, you're in the queue. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with you that the provenance of the data is important, but I don't think that needs to be captured in data tracker. I think that can be separate in some form of a spreadsheet or something that says this particular thing was told to us by this person in this mail message or that kind of stuff, because it's not an artifact that we need to, worry about in that type of way. We need to know that we got that data in case we want to change it later, but we don't need to share that in data tracker.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was just a matter of having it in order to vet the quality of the data before we decide to put it into the data tracker. And at that point, that's where it lives and stops. All right.
Sorry, jumping in again, Robert. So what Rob and I have been talking about is some form of crowdsourcing, as Robert said, but trying to find somebody from the community who might take a bit of a lead in organising this, because as all of this data comes in, somebody's got to put it in a spreadsheet and edit it and those type of things, and structure it, because we want it in a structured format that imports into data tracker afterwards. Now, one of the questions we have is that realistic, expecting someone from the community to do that? Do we actually need to go and pay a contractor to receive all of this and do that editing, or is that simply just the whole thing a non-starter? The views would be interested in here.
Not a lot of people running to the mic. If anybody thinks that this is not a good use of anybody's time, say so.
I know that this is something that we get asked on the Secretariat side a lot too. So if it could happen, I think that would be great. I guess a question I have would this be something where we wait till we have what we think is complete data and then import it, or would it be a case of stuff being added piecemeal as it is vetted?
I think we'd have to develop a plan around that. My instinct is that we would bring in relatively complete data sets, but we should be able to get, for example, the history of the area directors in the ISG and who was an IAB member back to the beginning of time much more quickly than we can get who were the working group chairs or who were the working group secretaries, or when did BOSS close. So those containers of data, the decision for when to bring them in would be scoped to the container. So Joe made a comment in the chat. His microphone's not working, but he notes that it's worth opening this to the community and that there might be some librarian or historians that would enjoy doing this. But if no one seriously bites, then we could perhaps look to contract it out. All right, that hits the end of our hot topics. There's an FYI in here that I wanted to remind everyone of. There is a fairly large infrastructure change that we'll be making after 123, moving the data tracker, the website, the IMAP server, the NFS server, and mail archive, everything that shares data via the shared file system that we currently have. And are still working to get away from, but right now we still have it. We're going to be moving it from DigitalOcean into Azure for reasons that we talked about in past meetings, but as a real quick note, it's going to give us access to more performant hardware and more control over things like deploying updates to Kubernetes environments and things of that nature than we currently have at DigitalOcean. Once we make that move, it will complete our swap of production into Azure and staging back into DigitalOcean. We'll still be using DigitalOcean for staging and ensuring that we're maintaining cloud portability as we're building new infrastructure. The rest of what's in the notes is intended to be taken as read. If anyone has anything that they've added that they want to call attention to, please do so now, or if anyone has any questions about what they see there. Not hearing anything, I'll make one more call for any other business. All right. Thanks everyone for taking the time. We appreciate all of the input that we get on these calls. We'll hopefully see many of you in person and the rest of you online during IETF 123. See you soon.